Abandoned Supergirl epics.
Where is my dog?
A new Gods movie, and an Angelina Jolie Wonder Woman. In a less fractured timeline, DC had a lineup of films that could have given Marvel a run for its money. While Warner Brothers couldn't figure out what to do with Superman in the late 2010s, attention soon shifted over to his cousin. First announced back in 2018, the project eventually gained new momentum when Sasha Calle was cast as the DCEU Supergirl in The Flash. If all went according to plan, Calle would have followed her debut with a solo movie penned by Ana Nogueira. Those ambitious plans, though, eventually hit some speed bumps. For starters, Supergirl died at the hands of General Zod. While that's hardly the best launchpad for a solo movie, the more pressing matter was the DC Studios reboot, which kicked off with Superman. Sure enough, this version of Supergirl was canned, and Calle's time as the character became a one-and-done endeavor. Millie Alcock was later cast as Kara Zor-El, making her on-screen debut in the final minutes of Superman, before headlining her own 2026 solo movie. Less than a year after Ben Affleck signed on to play Batman in the DC Extended Universe, news broke that the actor would also write, direct, and star in a solo movie about the Caped Crusader. Those plans changed by the beginning of 2017, when it was announced that Affleck would step down as director. Then he quit the project entirely, noting that his own personal struggles influenced his decision to walk away from helming and starring in a Batman movie. In the years since the project fizzled out, there were various glimpses into what could have been. Joe Manganiello, who was cast as Deathstroke, described one set piece from the abandoned film that would feature Batgirl teaming up with Bruce Wayne against Deathstroke, and a climactic battle in Gotham City. Considering it's a Batman movie set in Gotham City, though, that doesn't reveal a whole lot. While Affleck never got to headline his own solo Batman movie, he did briefly reprise the role in 2023's The Flash. Speaking of Manganiello and Deathstroke, around 2016, there was also talk about getting the Raid director Gareth Evans to helm a solo movie for Slade Wilson, which would be a gritty, bloody affair and a sharp departure from traditional all-ages superhero fare. But just like Affleck's solo Batman movie, the Deathstroke film never got off the ground. A year after it was first announced, Evans said that he hadn't heard anything new on Deathstroke. It's a little surprising that DC didn't charge ahead with the project, given the massive success Deadpool was seeing at the time. Manganiello revealed to comicbook.com that the reason the project got cancelled was due to concerns over the story it was telling, and of course the budget to tell it. As he explained, when the dust settled, it was not seen as a priority to make a $40 million movie about a villain origin story. While Manganiello has expressed hope that a different incarnation of the project could one day emerge, there's no telling whether he'll be involved. In July 2025, screenwriter Matthew Orton reportedly delivered a script for a team-up movie with Deathstroke and Bane. So while it may not be the solo adventure fans wanted, there's hope that the character will live again.
On second thought, we do have something to celebrate.
In the deluge of announcements regarding future DC Comics movies back in October 2014, a solo Cyborg movie was set for theatrical release in April 2020. One of the most distant DC projects scheduled up to that point, there wasn't much in the way of development on the Cyborg film directly after that. The focus instead fell on introducing Cyborg to general audiences through the Justice League movie, though actor Ray Fisher expressed excitement over exploring the character in a standalone feature and in hiring a diverse cast and crew to work on the production. But as Justice League came and went, there were no further developments for Cyborg. No writers were hired to even write a first draft for the film, let alone finding a director. Fisher began to express doubts the film would happen, with specific concerns over the budgetary problems with making a movie starring a fully digital character. By early 2021, Cyborg was officially dead, and Ray Fisher stepped away from the superhero role amid controversy over the way he was treated during Justice League reshoots. With the DCEU shelved in favor of James Gunn and Peter Safran's DC Studios relaunch in 2022, the reintroduction of Cyborg isn't likely to occur anytime soon. Justice League released in 2017, but all the way back in 2007, Warner Bros. Was trying to get a live-action Justice League movie off the ground. Titled Justice League Mortal, it was set to be directed by Oscar-winning Mad Max creator George Miller and developed as an elaborate affair divorced entirely from the continuity of then-current Superman and Batman movies like Superman Returns and Batman Begins. A cast was assembled for the production that included people ranging from Adam Brody to Jay Baruchel, while Miller planned to film the project in his home country of Australia. They actually got pretty far into pre-production, according to Armie Hammer, who'd been cast as Batman.
Like a month, 2 months, doing, doing like shoots, doing like rehearsals in the suits, all the characters in their suits.
Then the 2007-2008 Writers Guild of America strike happened. As the work stoppage wore on, Warner Bros. Kept pushing back the start of filming until the movie was set to begin principal photography just after The Dark Knight was released. But once that movie hit theaters and shattered several box office records, Warner Bros. Had a change of heart. The studio's ambitions for their comic book movies were adjusted to adhere to Christopher Nolan's grounded vision, rather than the more heightened spectacle Miller had planned. Back in the early 2000s, Joss Whedon was one of the hottest creative voices around, thanks to his TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly. He was so in demand, in fact, that he signed on in 2006 to write and direct a live-action Wonder Woman movie. This was on the heels of his feature directorial debut, Serenity, and showed that Warner Bros. Was ready to embrace one of DC's most iconic characters. Whedon would later note that Angelina Jolie was his dream pick for his take on Wonder Woman, though the project never got far enough to start casting. At the start of 2007, Whedon departed the project and Warner Bros. Decided to go in a different direction. It would take an entire decade for the first live-action solo Wonder Woman movie to make its way to the big screen in 2017. And Whedon finally got his chance to direct Wonder Woman in a movie when he took over the reshoots of Justice League, but that didn't turn out very well.
I don't believe it. What are you?
A believer.
In the early days of the DCEU, plans began to formulate for Harley Quinn vs. Joker. The project was entrusted to Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, a duo who struck box office gold for Warner Bros. With their 2011 movie, Crazy Stupid Love. Their description of the project made it sound like a warped entry befitting the clown prince of crime. Ficarra talked to Metro about the script in the fall of 2018 and said it opened with Harley kidnapping Dr. Phil, with Dr. Phil playing himself to resolve her and the Joker's relationship problems. He said, "We had so much fun. I don't know if we have had more fun writing a script in our career. We were doing a relationship movie but with the sensibility of a bad Santa, up, mentally deranged people. It was a lot of fun." This was before Todd Phillips' Joker and before Birds of Prey, and at the time, the duo expressed uncertainty over whether or not the screenplay would actually get turned into a real movie. Just months later, it was revealed that the project had been shelved. Horror director Vincenzo Natali broke out big time with his 1997 horror film Cube. It was inevitable that he'd get offers to do more high-profile work, and eventually one such opportunity arose in the form of a new film take on Swamp Thing. Previously brought to life in a pair of 80s movies, Natali's take on the material was aiming to be something quite different. Then radio silence. That became especially apparent after Natali's 2010 film Splice bombed at the box office. That film's failure could be a reason why passion called for Natali's take on this DC Comics mainstay, though Natali claimed it was due to complicated rights issues related to the character. Years later, Natali shared some of the pages from his screenplay on X. These samples of his writing give a glimpse into the unique take Natali was planning to deliver for this protector of the swamp, who later surfaced in a short-lived, unrelated TV series on the now-dormant DC Universe platform. But while Natali's version never made it out of the pre-production swamp, the new DCU has tentative plans to resurrect the character in a feature by Logan director James Mangold. Aquaman was a massive success that exceeded all expectations, and a sequel was ordered pretty much immediately. But the movie proved so lucrative that Warner Brothers had even grander plans to expand its universe with a spin-off called The Trench.
What the hell are these things?
The trench! We're here!
The Trench would have had more of a horror tone in line with what Aquaman director James Wan was known for. But after that, the trail went quiet on The Trench, with no real updates on the production beyond the producer noting it would likely arrive before Aquaman 2 hit theaters. It didn't, and in April 2021, it was announced that the movie was no longer happening. And so, The Trench sank deep into the depths of development hell. New Gods isn't one of the most famous domains in the DC Comics pantheon. With characters like Big Barda and Granny Goodness, it's a land full of weirdness that would take a delicate filmmaking touch to bring to a live-action movie. Enter Ava DuVernay, who signed on in March 2018 to helm a new feature film adaptation of the property. A year later, Tom King, a veteran of writing for DC Comics, was recruited to help pen the screenplay. The project continued to gain momentum in the next couple of years, with DuVernay noting at the end of 2020 that the pandemic had only heightened her enthusiasm for the project. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers announced in April 2021 that the New Gods movie was no longer happening. No official reason was given for this cancellation, but rumors swirled that it had to do with the fact that one of the film's characters, Darkseid, had just appeared in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Decades after Batman Returns hit theaters, Michelle Pfeiffer's take on Catwoman remains one of the most iconic versions of the character.
Meow.
She was so popular that there were initially plans to spin this version of the character off into her own movie. News first broke in 1993 that Pfeiffer's Catwoman wouldn't be in Batman Forever because Warner Brothers wanted her to headline her own solo movie. From there, different incarnations of the project emerged, including one pitch that came about as late as the end of the 90s from writer John August. But after Batman and Robin, Warner Brothers got a little scared of making more comic book movies and decided to put a pin in the project. Originally, Warner Brothers had high hopes for Batman and Robin, believe it or not.
Cool party.
Months before it hit theaters, the studio signed director Joel Schumacher to direct another one and even commissioned a script called Batman Unchained. By the end of 1997, after Batman and Robin was officially declared a box office disappointment, Schumacher confirmed he still wanted to do one more Batman movie that would appeal to the character's die-hard fanbase. Unfortunately, Batman Unchained was cancelled, and Warner Brothers eventually opted to reboot the franchise entirely, meaning fans missed out on a chance to see Nicolas Cage play the Scarecrow. And speaking of Nicolas Cage, the saga of Superman Lives has become as famous as any comic book storyline. Kevin Smith was hired to write a screenplay for a new Superman movie, and Tim Burton signed on to direct. Superman Lives got far enough along in production to not only cast Nicolas Cage as Superman, but to even have him do costume tests in a new version of the Superman outfit. But Superman Lives was shelved and reported 3 weeks before cameras were scheduled to roll, with Warner Brothers concerned about spending so much money on a Superman film. The project died, though the concept of a gigantic spider that was planned to factor into the film made its way into Wild Wild West. And many years later, Nick Cage, his Superman suit, and a giant spider made their theatrical debut in a scene in The Flash, which caught Cage by surprise just as much as general audiences.
They de-aged me and I'm fighting a spider. I didn't do any of that.
In October 2014, Warner Brothers revealed that a Justice League sequel would arrive in theaters in June 2019, just 19 months after the first movie. Zack Snyder was going to write and direct the project, but that was all before the chaotic production of the first Justice League film. Just weeks after Justice League premiered, word broke that there were no further plans to retain Snyder for more DCEU movies. More the Justice League sequel had been put on the back burner despite the endless teasers in the Snyder Cut.
There's a war coming, and I'm here to help.
I'm sorry, who are you again?
Despite Justice League 2 going unmade, Snyder has been open about his plans for not just this film, but a potential third Justice League movie. These follow-ups would have eventually involved the Nightmare Domain and evil Superman teased in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice and Zack Snyder's Justice League. While Snyder had expansive plans for how to follow up Justice League, it's clear Warner Brothers has no intention of exploring those ideas anytime soon. After Wonder Woman became a massive hit that exceeded $800 million at the worldwide box office, a series of sequels seemed inevitable. Director Patty Jenkins eventually returned for Wonder Woman 1984, which hit theaters in December 2020, and also constantly remarked that she had plans for a third Wonder Woman movie. But that was all before James Gunn and Peter Safran took over DC Studios in late 2022. Initial uncertainty over how the duo would handle the DC Extended Universe quickly turned into confirmation that a full-fledged reboot was on the way. That meant new takes on these DC characters were now the priority, instead of extending the storyline and characters of Wonder Woman 1984.
Where are you now on one? Are you done with Wonder Woman? Is that
Yeah, for the time being, yeah.
But you, I mean,
But
that's
easily forever.
As of this video, screenwriter Ana Nogueira is penning the script for a new Wonder Woman film with a new star. The Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina, didn't debut in the comics, but rather in an animated television program, specifically the all-new Super Friends Hour in the late 70s. Decades later, they'd enter the official DC Universe comics canon and have since appeared in other pieces of DC Comics media, namely episodes of Justice League Unlimited and Smallville. However, for one brief moment, it looked like the Wonder Twins might make the leap to feature films, with Warner Media looking to exploit as many of its DC characters as possible across various mediums. A Wonder Twins movie suddenly seemed possible. The feature quickly gained momentum and even cast KJ Apa and Isabel May in the lead roles. Plans to start shooting in late 2022 commenced, but just as it was getting off the ground, the Warner Bros. Discovery merger killed the feature as part of a larger shift away from streaming exclusive movies. For now at least, that's the end of the Wonder Twins' exploits in cinema.
Form a puddle! What is this?
After years of development and endless behind-the-scenes hurdles, The Flash started shooting in April 2021. Warner Bros. Brass were very keen to make sure that the very first live-action movie, based on Barry Allen, was not a one-off. Months before the film hit theaters, news broke that a script was being written for The Flash 2. The Flash director, Andy Muschietti, revealed, just as his movie was hitting theaters, that he was interested in returning for a sequel. But then, The Flash absolutely cratered in its theatrical run. Despite years of hype and a massive budget, the movie couldn't even hit $275 million worldwide. Plus, James Gunn and Peter Safran, by this point, were quickly laying the groundwork for their rebooted DC universe. It was an unceremonious end for a property that struggled for years just to get in front of cameras. Given that it made just over $665 million worldwide, you'd think a straightforward sequel to Man of Steel would have been in the works immediately. But the DC Extended Universe was in a constant state of retooling throughout the second half of the 2010s. As the franchise tried to figure out its creative future, concocting a second Man of Steel adventure was never a top priority.
I don't think they're interested in sharing this world.
Years after Warner Bros. Seemed indifferent to more Man of Steel, it was revealed in October 2022 that this version of the classic DC superhero was indeed coming back to theaters. Man of Steel 2 was suddenly in active development, with Warner Bros. Seeking out screenwriters and a director for the budding project. Well, you probably know what happened then. Gunn and Safran wanted a fully rebooted Superman and killed off Man of Steel 2 once and for all. It took Dwayne Johnson decades to finally play Black Adam in a theatrical motion picture, and the 2022 movie was meant to kickstart a whole new age for the DC Extended Universe centered around Johnson's creative vision.
Things will never be the same, because the hierarchy of power in the DC universe is about to change.
It changed alright, but not the way The Rock expected. As late as December 2022, major media outlets claimed that Warner Bros. Was still eager to make another Black Adam movie. But just a few days before Christmas 2022, Johnson announced he would not reprise the role of Black Adam in the near future. DC's post-2022 movie plans centered on Gunn and Safran's vision for a rebooted mythology. That left no room for Black Adam 2, though box office-related factors would have made that sequel a long shot even without corporate tomfoolery. The sorceress turned crime fighter Zatanna has long been a cult favorite character in DC Comics lore, so it seemed inevitable that she'd get her own feature-length adventure. That appeared to be coming true in the early 2020s, when Zatanna was confirmed as one of the initial DC movies being made for HBO Max. Emerald Fennell, fresh off her Oscar-winning work on Promising Young Woman, penned the script for the film, though no director was ever attached to the project, nor were there ever rumblings about who would play Zatanna. Eventually, this became one of many planned DC Extended Universe titles that got killed as a result of the Warner-Discovery merger, with the new execs more interested in cutting costs and halting the practice of sending feature films straight to streaming. Both mandates spelled doom for projects like Zatanna, with DC Studios pursuing a cinematic clean slate. There was no way Zatanna's movie would survive, and it unsurprisingly died a quiet death. Fans will just have to keep waiting for this beloved character to get the proper movie treatment that she deserves. The 1985 to 1986 DC Comics storyline, Crisis on Infinite Earths, has had an enormous influence on all comics media over the last 40 years. Inevitably, the story has been adapted into other media, including a 2024 animated film, as well as an ambitious 2019 Arrowverse interpretation. But such a gargantuan collision of the DC multiverse couldn't be kept off the big screen forever. By 2002, it was revealed that former DC Films president Walter Hamada had once harbored plans to build all the DC Extended Universe movies toward a Crisis on Infinite Earths adaptation. Given how jagged and disjointed the various DCEU enterprises were up to that point, the idea of uniting them all for one big blockbuster sounded like a risky proposition.
Hell's breaking loose all over this stupid planet.
In fact, everything about this adaptation is nebulous, as it apparently never progressed beyond being an idea Hamada had for the future of the franchise. Just a few weeks after director Chris McKay's The Lego Batman movie hit theaters, McKay signed on to helm a DCEU feature centered not on the Caped Crusader, but on Dick Grayson, aka Nightwing. No matter how many upheavals or regime changes occurred at DC Films over the next 4 years, Nightwing refused to die. McKay would consistently reaffirm online that the project was very much alive, even as he shifted focus to other live-action movies like The Tomorrow War and Renfield. As late as summer 2021, McKay insisted that the movie was merely delayed rather than shelved. In the end, though, Nightwing never materialized, becoming another one of many DCEU features announced in the late 2010s that never progressed beyond the press release and the script. The movie that was farthest in the future in the October 2014 announcement of upcoming DCEU films was June 2020's Green Lantern Corps. Warner Brothers clearly wanted to get the DC universe firmly established before trying to convince audiences to give another theatrical Green Lantern movie a chance.
What's with all the green?
The project began making headway in 2017, with David S. Goyer and Justin Rhodes penning Green Lantern Corps, but the film never made its initial June 2020 release date, with Corps constantly getting stuck in the development phase. With the DCEU's collapse, Green Lantern Corps also perished, but after the DCEU dragged its feet for years on bringing Green Lantern back to theaters, DC Studios charged ahead with it. Superman heavily featured Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, while a Lanterns TV show is set to premiere on HBO in early 2026. Probably the most infamous of all unrealized DC movies, Batgirl actually got into principal photography in late 2021 and early 2022. Leslie Grace was set to play Barbara Gordon/Batgirl, with Michael Keaton and J.K. Simmons reprising their respective roles as Batman and Commissioner Gordon. A few months into the Warner-Discovery merger, however, the HBO Max original film Batgirl was permanently shelved and written off as a tax break. Because certain Batgirl scenes still needed to be shot when it was cancelled, this film remains permanently lost and incomplete. Not since The Killing Joke has Barbara Gordon been done so dirty.